What's up, fight fans? Welcome to my channel. This is Johnny, and in today's video we're going to be going over the statistics that nobody talks about when mentioning this past weekend's title fight between Jaron Boots Ennis and Karen Chukhadzhian. Guys, before we continue, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been with me since day one, and if you haven't already, could you please hit subscribe and the notification buttons? That'll help me a lot. Every time I put out something that's new, you'll be the first to be notified. Thank you. Guys, this past weekend in Philadelphia, we had a couple title fights. Wells Fargo Center was the location of the event, and we had Bam Rodriguez, who looked spectacular, knocking out Pedro Guevara. And in the main event, we had the hometown son, Jaron Boots Ennis, once again taking on Karen Chukhadzhian for Boots' 147-pound strap. We know they fought prior. A lot of people didn't want to see this fight. We saw what happened the first time, and it was a mandatory. And say what you will about Boots' resume, there are some facts about that. We know he's only beaten one world champion, and that was Sergey Lipnitz. But we also know on the other side of that argument is so many fighters have turned him down. He has spent some moments of being static in his career. He still is only 27, and he has improved his record now to 33-0. With the help of matchman Eddie Hearn, he has been more active. This is already his second fight in less than a year, and both fights have been headlined in his hometown. So we like to see that. As boxing fans, we know that Boots is extremely talented. We just want to see him matched up with the fighters at the top of the weight class, whether it's 47 or 54. And after this fight, out of the horse's mouth, Boots did say he probably will move up to 54. Before we get there though, we're gonna break down this fight. If you guys live streamed it with me, I say thank you. We talked about the fight. We did the Bam fight and we did the Boots fight. And round by round, I scored it. And we know Boots won a unanimous decision. There's no question about him winning the fight. In my opinion, there's some questions on some scorecards. The scorecards were all over the place. This was a much tougher fight than Boots. Now, is it hard for a fighter to get up for an opponent that he's already beaten? 100%. Is it hard for a fighter to take an opponent maybe he didn't want to fight? 100%. And I feel this is what we saw. It was a far cry from the night before when we got to see Keyshawn Davis in his hometown in Norfolk and show out and show off with a spectacular knockout. This is what I was expecting to see from Boots. This is what I thought he was gonna have to do to maintain his career trajectory as a superstar and hopefully in his eyes, one day the face of boxing. It just didn't happen. Ukrainian's Chukhadzhian was a tough matchup this time around. He was the one who made adjustments. Shockingly, we thought Boots was gonna have to be the one to make adjustments regarding how that first fight went. Chukhadzhian danced a lot in the first fight, circled around, circled to the left. He wasn't really standing his ground or fighting Boots, and we thought that Boots was gonna have to work on cutting off the ring. But from the very first bell, this was not the case. Chukhadzhian made the adjustment of staying in the middle and forcing Boots to fight him and him make the adjustment. And when you look at those scorecards, I'm gonna pull those out. So the three judges at ringside scored it 119 to 107, 117 to 109, and 116 to 110. Those first two judges' scorecards, in my opinion, I thought was some verdicts of some home cooking. 119 to 107 is crazy. Now 116 to 110, there were very few close rounds. So I actually had it 114 to 112 when I was scoring it live. I was not a fan of the referee taking a point away from Chukhadzhian for grabbing. When Boots, I counted 7 low blows and the ref never called one. So if you're not gonna call one on one fighter and gonna deduct a point late in the fight, that point got deducted late. I think it was the 10th round, and that really put Chukhadzhian behind on the cards. I just don't agree with that point deduction. We knew that Chukhadzhian got dropped in the 5th round, and I feel this was Boots' best chance to get him out of there. And we've seen in the past with big fights, with fighters who aren't as experienced or aren't as savvy as Chukhadzhian, when they get in trouble, they want to stand and trade. Think about Tim Tszyu versus Murtazaylab. One of the biggest adjustments I'd like to see Tszyu make is in that firefight when he gets hurt, rather than having your hands down and exchanging fire with fire, grab, tussle up, or what Chukhadzhian did, like a savvy veteran, he took a knee. And during the live stream, I said, I appreciate that. When you see a fighter take a knee, it's not that he's being a punk, it's not that he's quitting. He wants to last the whole fight. That shows veteran, that shows savvy, and that shows a guy who knows how to survive. So when I saw him take that knee in the 5th, and I saw Boots couldn't get him out of there, I kind of knew it was gonna go all 12. So that round is obviously a 10-8 in the 5th. Now he also has that 10-8 in the 10th due to that point deduction. So when I rewatched it, I changed my scorecards from 114 to 112, and I went from 116 to 110, and that was agreed upon by the third judge. But 117 to 109 and 119 to 107 is no respect for Chukhadzhian. Now, the Jaron Boots Ennis that I saw needs to work on a few things. Before we get to the punch total stats, which will tell the story of this fight, actually some interesting numbers on those punch stats round by round, talk a little bit about what I feel Boots has to work on. 100% his defense. Having the guard down inside the pocket or outside the pocket, specifically to get style points, is ridiculous in boxing. He took way too many clean shots from Chukhadzhian that he didn't have to take if he would have just done this. And we have to say, if you watch a fight, both guys have chins. You can't doubt Boots' chin. He did get wobbled the very first round. Chukhadzhian lands a hook on top of that ear, and Boots wobbled a bit. It was the first time we got to see it. The announcers barely talked about it. That happened in the very first round, and we know that he can take a shot. Now, another thing I want to talk about is his focus with inside the fight. When you're at the highest level fighting world champions and killers from all around the world, you need to be laser focused every second of the fight. And I didn't like what I saw, him turning to his corner and talking to his corner, talking to somebody in the crowd in the middle of the fight. And this was affecting him. He looked, I don't want to say uncomfortable in there, but from about the 5th round onwards, when he couldn't get Chukhadzhian out of there, he looked frustrated. And that's the first time I saw that within a fight with Boots. Now, granted, he is only 27. He's gonna learn a lot from this fight. He's gonna grow a lot from this fight. Another thing I wanna talk about what happened in that fight is the fact that his father, that corner advice, we only hear good things from Boozy Ennis, but I have to disagree with you, Boozy. You gave your son awful advice. To tell a fighter, to tell your son, to tell a student to go out there and just knock their opponent out without any specific skill, tactical advice, without saying, hey, circle left, or work the jab a bit more to the body, bring his hands down, then go up top, or circle right, feint, angle change, and hit him with that uppercut. Without saying any of those things, just telling your son to knock him out when the son is in there fighting is horseshit. And I apologize for my language, but as a coach myself who coaches people, I just couldn't believe I was hearing that from a veteran former fighter as Boozy Ennis. He equally, and to be fair to Boozy, he was probably equally as frustrated. Both guys had a lot of pressure on them because of what Bam looked like the fight before, and then also in their hometown. Now, another thing I want to talk about before I get to the numbers is I don't like Boots Ennis switching to southpaw, and I talked about this in the live stream. Southpaw, it's very gimmicky with his style. It's not like a Terrence Crawford switching from southpaw to ortho. With Bud, he's very disciplined defensively. He's tactically, his punches are straight. He doesn't open up, and he does it to confuse his opponent. With Boots, when he switches to southpaw, his jab has nothing on it. He just pokes it out there, and we can all see what he's trying to do. He's trying to hit that huge, heavy uppercut, but Chukhadzhian saw it from the first round, and Boots came out in rounds 1 and 2 southpaw, and I said this in between rounds. If I was Boozy, I would say, son, stop switching, fight him orthodox. You're getting hit too much. And then he started fighting more and more orthodox. So if I was Boots, throw the style points out the way. You want to be flashy, but at the risk of what? Your career? You get knocked out in that fight, you know, you pretty much have to start from the beginning. And I don't think Boots won too many new fans with this fight. Me being a boxing purist, I still know he's world class. I still know he's skilled. I still expect super great things from Boots Ennis. I'm excited to see what's next now because I want to see adjustments. I'm glad he didn't go in there and starch Chukhadzhian within the first few rounds, with a lot of people expected. Now I see a guy, a 27-year-old who still has a lot to learn, a lot to grow, get to make adjustments, and that in my eyes is what builds world champions. Now let's look at the total punches. We're going to talk about the power punches and the total punch stats of the fight. And I was actually shocked when I rewatched it and looked at those stats. All right, guys. Over the 12 rounds, Jaron throws 730 punches and lands 224 at 31%. Chukhadzhian throws 522, landing 173 at 33%. Ennis was less effective and less accurate, but he threw more, almost 150 punches more. What's shocking is when you look at round by round breakdown of the 12 rounds, Boots Ennis landed more than Karen 10 out of 12 rounds. Chukhadzhian only outlanded Boots in 2 rounds. And I found that shocking because when I was doing the analyst the first time I watched the fight, I gave Chukhadzhian the first and second round based off of Chukhadzhian wobbling Ennis and then Ennis having to make the adjustment going from second to third, switching from southpaw to orthodox. But when you look at the stats of the first to second round, Ennis throws 70 and lands 18. Chukhadzhian only threw 37 and lands 8. When you have a guy landing 18 versus 8, you got to give it to the guy landing 8, and that was Ennis. Same thing with the second round. Boots throws 53 punches, landing 13. Chukhadzhian only threw 39, landing 4. Now, this is what made me rewatch the fight, and I initially gave those 2 rounds to Chukhadzhian. I flip-flopped. I did keep the first round to Chukhadzhian, but gave the second one to Boots, and that's why my scorecard changed. When we look at the power punches, and we know that this was the tell of the story, he's a knockout artist. Going into the fight, Boots was 32-0 with 29 knockouts. This is where his frustration was lying. He landed some bombs on Chukhadzhian, and I think partly it was shocking to him how tough Chukhadzhian was. I like what Shakur said afterwards, that Chukhadzhian's a dog. It's tough to get that man out of there, and he fought really well. Chukhadzhian's angles were on point. He was there to be hit, and he was there to hit, and he was the first opponent that we saw stand up to Boots in the pocket and trade. And I think all of that clinching was getting into Boots' head, and he was getting frustrated. But he did box well enough to win, and I want to reiterate that. The power punches of the story, 494 was thrown by Boots, landing 177 at a 36% clip. Chukhadzhian throws 345, landing 128 at a 37% clip. So once again, Chukhadzhian has the higher accuracy than Boots, but Boots has a higher output in total punches and power punches by almost 150 more punches. And that's a testament to Boots' speed, his output, his cardio. Both guys' endurance were through the roof, and that's a testament to the professionalism. I said during fight week, though, Boots looked drawn out. I know a lot of pro Boots fans don't want to hear that. I think it's time for him to move to 54. With his frame and how long he is, his abdominals were flat. And that might sound kind of weird to you guys, but if you look at a fighter, the abdominals, how the muscles fill out, especially after a weight cut, tells a lot about a fighter and athlete, if they're dehydrated or not, if it was a tough weight cut. And his abdominals in this fight, look at his prior fights, they were flat and they weren't kind of puffed out in a good way. And that told me that it was a bad weight cut. One of the first things he said in his press conference was he thinks it's time to move up to 154 if you can't get any big fights at 47. But what are the big fights at 47? Barrios, Brian Norman Jr., you go to 54, think about those guys. You know, he might get his wish. Terrence Crawford, Madrimov, Bohacek, Virgil, Tim Tszyu. So there's guys at 54, Fundora, Errol Spence Jr. I mean, there's guys there, much bigger names than the 47 stable. And I think we need to give 47 a couple years to kind of calibrate, get some new names. I think it's time for Boots Ennis to move to 54. I want to know your thoughts, guys. What'd you think of this fight? Rate his performance. I put that question up on our Facebook group, and this isn't me hating. 1 to 10, I gave Boots a 5, and I want to know your opinion on that. Should he stay at 47? Should he go at 54? What would you score him for his last fight against Chukhadzhian? And who do you want to see him fight next? Leave all that in the comment section below.